Welcome to Learning cEDH, the podcast dedicated to teaching you everything you need to know about competitive Commander. I'm your host, Matthew, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Eric. And today we're doing a kind of rare, I would say, set review. We don't generally do a lot of these. It'll usually be like, we'll mention like, hey, we got this card coming up in this set, barring like something like MH3, which is like, hey, we know our format's gonna get broken. But for Avatar, there's enough like really impactful stuff and things that are maybe more on the fringes or have to get ironed out, support their own decks or whatever, that it definitely seemed worth it. Plus, we have already made lots of changes to our decks and have ideas where we might go. And it seemed worth it to do a full episode going over cards from Avatar, some of the most powerful ones, and specifically where we think they'll be good and what we're planning to do with them and our experiences with them, because we both already played. So especially with the new green cards that everyone knows are good and I think are still getting underrated, because I think they're actually just kind of broken and just they're going to change the format. They're that level of staple.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've done one of these. I've gotten asked like why I haven't recorded, why I haven't been going to like tournaments and stuff. And I'm like, I don't know, I just like hanging out with my son. Like we always have like some kind of like family thing planned, or I'm working on the house, or I'm doing lots of new cooking. I'm working on my new business. I don't think we've ever talked about that officially. So I actually have a coffee business, but that's been going very well. It's really been fun doing something completely dynamic. And so like Magic and stuff, while I still like completely follow Magic, like sadly, like probably to a fault, cEDH has probably been like the lowest on the totem pole, but Avatar's really kind of sparked that desire to start working more so like and kind of preparing for tournaments more so for next year. Like if you're married and you have kids, holiday season is probably the worst possible time to try to play Magic tournaments unless you got like a local nearby. Traveling, that's probably a no-go for me for at least till probably January.
If you enjoy this video, like, comment, subscribe, let us know down below what you think about the new Avatar cards. This isn't fully exhaustive. We're not going to go over everything. Like I mentioned, we're going to try to keep it a little bit more brief, and there's definitely some cards I think are more worth talking about where we'll give more focus to some of the stuff, and then some I just want to mention as like maybe potential new decks, things that are worth playing. I think we were both talking about this before we started recording, where this looks like a set people are going to be revisiting and finding more cards that are more playable, especially the more you lean into some of these synergies. A lot of people still don't understand how earthbending works. They mess up something in the rules. It's going to take people a little bit to figure out some of that, and then also where that is worth playing and stuff like that. But I think with all that being said, we can just go ahead and hop into it.
Use the link in the description below to download Whatnot, and you'll get $15 to use to buy Magic singles, sealed product, get anything that you want, really. There's no limits. You just get $15 on the account for free just for signing up. Use the link in the description below. Give Whatnot a try.
All right, the first we're going to take a look at is Planetarium of Wan Shi Tong. This is a 6-mana legendary artifact where you can pay 1, tap it to scry 2, and whenever you scry or surveil, you look at the top card of your library and you may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Do this only once each turn. This one is a little bit more fringy. We wanted to mention it because in larger mana decks or more artifact-centric decks, stuff that's cheating stuff into play, your more colorless-centric stuff, it probably will just show up in some places. I don't think you want to do this with Thrasios specifically. It's actually very awkward with Thras because you scry, put the card somewhere, and then you just random flip and hope that your Omniscience for the turn actually lands on a spell. I wouldn't be surprised if like, oh, this is a banger in Zuladoc, or something like that. But it's one of those cards that the effect is unique and powerful enough. I think it could show up, and it has obvious synergies that are strong. But where it's good, like, is it a Glarb banger in like a big mana Glarb deck? I don't know, but it is like unique enough. I wanted to call it out.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously we have access to, like you said, Thrasios. You got Scry lands because it's Scry or Surveil.
Yeah.
So don't play Scry lands, play Surveil lands. They're searchable. Where I see this card specifically is some kind of like fair Goblin Welder deck that is able to put into play to create like another engine of something that they don't really have access to. So
now that I mention it though, I just want to play in Zuladoc. I want to Metalworker it out, play a banger. But yeah, it's just one of those cards that don't be surprised when you see it in like a random gameplay video or in some deck that shows up, So next up is Storm of Memories, which for 2 red gives you a sorcery with Storm, where you can exile an instant or sorcery card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard at random. You may cast it without paying its mana cost, and if that spell will be put into a graveyard, exile it instead. This is really most similar to cards like Invoke Calamity, I think, which we see in decks like Ral, some of the red centric storm decks. Really often in those decks, when you cast a card like this, it will basically say be a free Past in Flames kind of, or like a Past in Flames Omniscient sort of mix where you just exile your entire graveyard and cast all those spells. I don't know how it lines up with those cards. If you just have a bunch of mana and cast this, you just get all your spells back. Like if a Vivi or a Rel ran this, I wouldn't be surprised. Is it like crazy good? I don't know. As a way to just kind of keep attacking the stack. Honestly, it's probably better than like Mind's Desire, which Ral and decks like that have played. It's easier to come up with triple red versus double blue for Mind's in Ral specifically. And also you know what you're getting.
Also, it's a really nice payoff if you have like a Storm Killing Artist in play.
Because you don't even need the spells. You'll just make the copies. You'll get your stuff anyways, even if you're not really doing anything.
Yeah, it feels like it's almost like a Mizzix Mastery level card as well. When you do it, you're probably going to be able to target all of your 3 or unders, even if it's at random. Yeah, it's an interesting card. I like to see, I mean, any card like that has a lot of upside potential, even if it's like deck specific. It's just always something cool to see Storm on a card.
Next up, we have Monk. I think it's Gyatso. And this is a weirder one, but I wanted to talk about it because of some specifics with templating that make it seem like it will age kind of well. So it's 3 and white. It's a legendary creature. You get a 3/3 monk, and it has whenever another creature you control becomes the target of a spell or ability, you may airbend that creature, which is one of the new mechanics. It means that you exile it, and while it's exiled, its owner may cast it for 2 rather than its mana cost. So for instance, I play Monk Gyatso. I move to target one of my creatures with anything. It can be an equipment. Doesn't specifically, it's like Nadu, where it doesn't have to be an opponent's effect. Just anything targets. Then you get to exile your creature and pay it for 2. A like kind of basic combo you could do is similar to Nadu. You could play like Monk Gyatso, Shuko, and Cloud of Fairies, and just infinitely cast Cloud of Fairies by targeting it with Shuko over and over. It also works with, again, lots of other Nadu cards like your Sylvan Safekeeper, which I would expect this to be more in the kind of green Bant sort of pile where they have lots of powerful ETBs. This gives you a way for your creatures to never get killed through Bowmasters. They'll just get attacks on them, just go away, and you can pay them again for 2 later. Although it is a May, so it's not even forced. Like they have to put lethal damage on it, and then at the end you just say, lol, it's airbended. You know, they still have to ping your Seedborn 4 times, and then you say, okay, on the last one I'll let it go. I think it's kind of sick.
This card's, I like it a lot. I think it's pretty interesting for the strategies that want to play it, and then it's really powerful in those strategies. I just think it's like, it's crazy because it just says, just becomes the target of spell or ability, not your opponent's control, not you control, just
anytime.
Whenever. I like it. I think it's pretty good. And I think especially in the decks it's going to play in, they're going to have access to probably something like Gaia's Cradle. So they're always going to have a lot of mana probably available.
Yeah, I think it's like not an easy, like you don't take Yoshi Thras and just throw this in with no changes, I don't think. But honestly, if you did, it probably still wouldn't play that bad, but you just got to be aware, like this is a weird protective 4-drop, but it will just give you opportunities to do kind of wild stuff. I won't be surprised if this becomes a pretty popular card in those kind of decks. Those big mana shells. It lines up a lot with Livio also because Livio can target. So it's just 4 mana, which is a little expensive, but it even without a summoning sick Livio, you just have now it's for 3 and a white, you can just flicker any creature. So that on its own might actually have some combo like Livio, Cloud of Fairies, Monk, and then just Cradle with a white land can often go infinite with your Cradle count enough. So actually, I'm kind of talking myself into maybe this being a little better than I thought even. So I'm pretty excited for this.
Livio's the 2-drop partner, right?
Yes, 2 mana partner, and you can spend 1 and a white to exile. I think it's specifically target creatures controller may have it be exiled, and then with an Aegis counter on it. And so you target with your guy, and they usually do like untap combos where they use Livio to bring the creature back, and then you target an untapper. But with this, you could just get around that and just go Cloud of Fairies or Peregrine Drake. That's actually pretty good too. Okay, yeah, I think I'm liking the monk more and more I talk about it.
The only reason I remembered the card, it's like I knew the card, but it's because of the foil etched one. I've got like a foil etched one laying around. It's because you just pair that with Thrasios, right? So
yeah, like it recently did pretty well at an event. And it's been something, it's comparable to, it's one more mana than Yoshi, but it has actual text on it. Yeah, this is one to watch out for in those piles. And like seems like a Livio Thras semi-blue staple also. I'm excited for this one, actually. I think this one will be a lot of fun. 4 mana makes it fair and also like keeps it reasonable. You have to consider you're adding another 4-drop to your deck that's like kind of similar to Emil, but with you probably trick more people into letting this resolve because they don't know what it does. Next up is a probably even more niche one than the other ones we've been talking about, but like it's so cEDH kind of oriented to actually get the text on this. You almost have to be playing a cEDH game or just a really big, weird casual game. That's Katara's Reversal, which for 2 blue, you get an instant that lets you counter up to 4 target spells and or abilities, and then you untap up to 4 target artifacts and or creatures. We've seen what's Whirlwind Denial, I think, is the 3 mana. You can counter the stack or exile the stack. It's a pretty interesting card. It's like that, and also like Rewind or Unwind, where you can untap and get the mana back. Obviously, this can be mana positive in some of the cradle oriented decks that are running like Candelabra, and you have Enduring Vitality and stuff like that. It not being lands that you untap makes it less of a freebie than something like Rewind or Unwind, which is just mostly guaranteed to get you your mana back. But I think in a kind of control-oriented Thrasios deck, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the freaking Kennen nerds played something like this. Although it's not free, and a lot of them do, prioritize your disrupting shoals and stuff like that, misdirection commandeers as your free stuff. But I think it's at least something worth looking at and has some interesting text that's cEDH specific and could wind its way up into like lower color decks that are looking to be really interactive.
Yeah, it just seems like another tool to add to these kind of decks that might want something, especially the lower color decks are just trying to improve card quality that aren't necessarily trying to push the pace or win on like turn 2 to 3.
Next up, we have, I can't remember if it's Zhao or Shao. I watched the show, but I don't remember. He just shows up and kills. He shows up and kills a fish, and this is what happens. Blood Moon happens. So he is 1 in a red for a legendary human with Menace. Just on his own, he has non-basic lands intertapped. That is symmetrical, so that affects your lands, your opponent's lands. And then he has the ability to spend 7 mana to put a Conqueror counter on him. And then he gains the Magus of the Moon, Blood Moon effect of non-basic lands are mountains. And they will also still intertapped. So he can kind of become a super Magus. Really, I don't think you ever play him for the 7 mana, the 9 mana Magus with kicker. Basically. I think you are just playing this as a 2 mana creature that hates on non-basics, which is most of our format's mana bases. And it's just a reasonable like turn 1 play to slow people down. Any kind of red stack C list could probably think about it, justify it if you're playing a Winoda or anything like of that type. If you're interested in Magus effects, then this is one you can do. And also it doesn't have the king making effect that Magus can have, where like lots of people have untapped lands and you play Magus and you force someone to interact with you because you shut off their interaction. That could happen a lot in like the Esper sort of piles that are holding up ways to stop win attempts. And then if you just randomly throw down a Blood Moon, suddenly the Grixis deck can just kind of jam. This is like similarly good in the early turns, but also doesn't scale great into the late game the way a Blood Moon can. So it's a little bit different, but it is also the cheapest way we've got something like this. So I think it's just something to think about. Yeah,
these cards are just seeming like, again, like I said, we're just getting like more tools in the toolbox. Like that's what you want from a set, really. You don't necessarily want every card to be like a format defining card. We'll get to those a little later. But, whether these cards make it to your 99 or 98 is irrelevant. It's just the fact that you have access to these. So it just creates a larger card pool for cEDH to pull upon these, which is really nice.
Yeah, we just don't have a card that does this at this mana value. It's just something to think about. I think this is definitely also one of those just kind of a thing in your toolbox cards. The next one we're looking at, also 1 in a red, is Iroh's Demonstration, which is a sorcery lesson. Lesson synergies, not so much a thing that cEDH is going to care about, I think, too much, unless they do change how lesson learn works and there's some cracked ones that come out, or you're specifically playing the new teamer Iroh. You might be specifically playing some card that cares about it, but for the most part, it doesn't really matter. So yeah, and it is a lesson, and it has choose one. You can either have it deal 1 damage to each creature your opponents control, so it's asymmetrical, or you can have it deal 4 damage to target creature.
I don't think anyone's really covered this card. It's a card that actually I was pretty excited about. Not specifically for like my deck or anything. I think modal tools are really good in like lower colored builds, but if you are looking for a removal spell, if your deck for whatever reason is having an issue with like, if you've got like a lot of like Kennons or Rogs or particularly Bowmasters are running rampant in the format and Esper Sentinels, those types of things. 2 mana, wipe them all up.
Yeah.
Or if your deck has an issue with a specific dex creature, like an opposition agent, or do people even play Dauthi Voidwalker in anything anymore?
No. Drannith probably more reasonably.
Drannith, right? Like Drannith, those types of things, or just Seaborn 2/4 stuff like that. It fits both roles, and I think that's really, really nice. I actually think you'll probably use the first one, deal 1 damage to each creature opponent's controls, probably more often than you think. Having that, it's like almost like a red toxic deluge that you can't control, but you do get control in a certain way. I think that card's just really good, especially for red, getting a card that has options.
Yeah, and they're both options you can easily see a use case for, and that in most games that get to develop, they're not just like a turbo, you're dead on turn 2. You'll care about, I think, either mode throughout it, and depending on when you find it, you'll likely have a useful mode if you're not just trying to win that turn. I think this is our first probably potential staple, or like would be one. That is the Unagi of Kyoshi Island, which for 3 blue, you get a legendary creature Serpent. That's a 5/5 with flash. It also has Ward, Waterbend 4. I think it's the only Waterbend card we're going to talk about. But that is basically, to target this, you have to spend 4 mana, but then you can also tap your creatures or artifacts to help with that. And whenever an opponent draws their second card each turn, you draw 2 cards. So it has the same triggered effect as like Fairy Mastermind. Somebody draws the second card, but you draw 2 cards. You're getting a much bigger and harder to remove version of that. It's like somewhere between a Con Sphinx and a Fairy Mastermind. The flash part is pretty big. A mana lower and 5 is a lot easier to think of as like a reasonable turn 2, turn 3 thing to hold up alongside your interaction. Where if somebody's going to draw and like, okay, there's only one other person after this, I'm probably going to get to untap. I don't need to hold up this Swan Song. I'll just jam this out, draw 2 cards, maybe draw 4. Lines up well with like what the current sandbaggy kind of Kennon's draw engine focused list are kind of trying to do right now. So it seems pretty good for those type of decks.
Yeah. I mean, it's really easy to look at something like this when you get to slap, flash and draw 2 cards on a, it's like the bar is pretty low.
Yep.
like when you get to add all that stuff together, do you think this card is like a staple or like a testing card right now?
I think right now, I wouldn't want to say staple because it seems specific where it's going to go. Right. I think I doubt you're going to see like your actual blue farms or something like that play this. This is more of those like, yeah, this isn't blue farm, I'm Timnacron without Nas kind of card. I expect more in your Kennons. I don't even know if it's really like a Rog Thras kind of card. Some other Thras decks, like I wouldn't be surprised if some kind of TNT or something that cares about a lot of these effects too. So I think more testing, because I don't know who exactly is going to want it, but if things develop to like it's a pretty good mid-range option, right? It's also a 5/5 beater, so like the more slowed it gets, where you get to go flash in a 5/5, draw 2 cards, smack a player for 5, the ward cost is substantial. The 4 ward is pretty big. I think it's pretty good as a mid-range. Like it wouldn't surprise me to see it in things that lean into the Esper Pie too, but especially like your current kind of Kennons, it makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't be surprised if some people mess around with it in like Rog Thras, stuff like that.
Especially if the format ever shifts to more, I wouldn't say fair, but more responsible format, then you just get to hold up your mana, especially if you're going back into the lieu of Seaborn Muse, or like you said, any kind of like Esper pile, maybe like Esper plus green, another option. Obviously, Seaborn Muse. Be interesting to see that like in like Tivit as well. Just again, because like Tivit, you're going to hold up your mana. You're trying to interact maybe a little bit more. I don't know where Tivit's at currently in the format. I know there's been like some talk that it's still like really, really good, but that's yet to be seen. Like as a whole, I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, it's a powerful card, but yeah, I mean, just again, blue cards that get to draw cards that have flash. I mean, I just think we're at that point now where we're just going to see something like this. I don't say every set, but every other set, but
Not the only card we're going to talk about today that does this also. Flash
No
blue
way.
cards to draw cards.
They would
No, the only
not
one,
print
no.
a blue flash draw card staple 2-drop that scales.
You might be surprised. I do want to call it specifically, if you play a lot of these mid-rangey games, you're probably used to the really annoying play pattern of 2 players get a fairy mastermind and they start triggering each other. This does it way worse because they always trigger each other. So if you go flash this in, trigger, I draw one, somebody clones it. Anytime one of us gets triggered, we immediately trigger each other and we're drawing a lot of cards. If you draw your second card, you're drawing the table 8 cards. That play pattern specifically, I'm very glad this is a legend because cloning it would get really obnoxious too. Like it scales really quick, especially with 2 mana clones. Yeah, just having multiple people at the table with this is going to lead to a lot of games becoming a draw. And you can't bowmaster it down as word 4. So I could see this leading to some really annoying mid-range flop games. We'll see how often that happens. But yeah, don't be surprised.
Mid-range slop. What food do you think of when you hear mid-range slop? Do you ever think of like a food hit your like?
Yeah, just
I'm thinking of like Chinese buffet or something.
I think of a really bland, just like porridge. That's a mid-range slop for me. Just literal gray slop that you don't know what it is right on a cafeteria tray. That's what I'm thinking of. Next up, we have another lesson. Probably we'll see less play or less testing in decks overall, but I think has just one slam dunk home, maybe a couple. But it is abandoned attachments. For 1 and hybrid is it, you get a lesson that's instant. And you may discard a card if you do draw 2 cards. Really just what the Rao decks are looking for. They run like a whole bunch of these kind of effects, and this is the most castable of any of them. Generally, something being blue or red doesn't matter too much. You'll look at a hand and know how much you value blue pips. So sometimes you don't mind just spending the blue to get cards and then using your, one of your, like if you have 2 red left, you could easily get into a spot where you go, Bergie or Stormkiln or Electro into red card. Just another route card that any Is It deck looking to churn through the list. This is like the most castable of this kind of effect we've seen.
That's awesome. I mean, again, like when you look at the cards like this and they just give like more tools or upgrades to decks that are already established. I mean, that's a win in my opinion for a set. And this set really probably has like a lot more in-depth niche things like this that are just happen to be good. I was thinking of this, there's like a hybrid blue-red like looter that also can like sack in, return like an instant or sorcery to your hand. I'm just like, well, that card's just like a good looter on its own. It's not to say like looter effects are just like insane or anything, but just the, how much text there can fit on a card to where it's like starts looking appealing.
So next we have one of the 2 Gruul 4-drop Tophs. It makes it a little hard to talk about them. This is the one from the main set, which is Toph, Hardheaded Teacher. You have a legendary creature, human warrior ally, and when it enters, you can discard a card, and if you do, you return target instant or sorcery from your graveyard to your hand, which is pretty decent text on its own, that's fine. And then whenever you cast a spell, Earthbend 1, that spell is a lesson, put an additional +1/+1 counter on that land, and Earthbending, you might forget the text, but I'm about to read to you. But Earthbending means is target land you control becomes a 0/0 creature with haste that's still a land, put a +1/+1 counter on it. When it dies or is exiled, return it to the battlefield tapped. This specifically might be a niche player in some lands-focused decks that are in Gruul, which there aren't a ton of that are seeing a lot of play. But we've seen things like Rydia. We saw a lot of Edge of Eternity's cards lean into this. This might see play in them, or they might see play in this. Toph saying specifically just when you cast a spell, Earthbend 1, it's kind of nuts that you get to do that off of anything, not just instant or sorcery, not non-creature, any spell, because the Earthbending text is kind of ridiculous when your deck is built around it. There's lots of synergies with Earthbending, where if you get to tap your creatures for mana, they make more. We'll talk about that with Badgermole Cub. Animating lands in general has some powerful synergies with things like Springheart Nantuko, your sacrifice effects, maybe more casually leaning, but stuff like even Skull Clamp is kind of cracked, where you just get this free fodder to sacrifice lands. Often, if you run a deck like this, you'll run it with a card like Amulet of Vigor or some other effect to bring your lands back untapped. So you're just freely clamping guys, and anytime you cast a spell, you get more clamp fodder that pays for itself. Lots of stuff you can do with something like this. Also with the Sylvan Safekeeper, when you get into black, if you play this in like Jund, you get that with Squandered Resources, which is nuts. And we've just seen lots of lands, aftermath analyst kind of stuff happening in the format. I don't know if this is a real cEDH deck, but it is an awesome card.
Just by you talking about it, my head immediately went to because it's interesting because it's got the spell slinger effect. It's like it's like, wait a minute, like any spell, like if it said like non-creature or something like that, it would have put any spell. I think there might be, and I don't know what it even look like. Like I'd have to really sit down and look at it. But as we were talking before we started recording, is I think the first card in the deck outside before you hit creatures, it's Planeswalker and it's Tezzeret. Mm-hmm. So you go search out your Amulet, your Skull Clamps, your Zern Orb, those types of effects. Yep. And when you said Skull Clamp, Tezzeret searches Skull Clamp. That's pretty insane. I wonder if there's like a Gruul Cheerios like lands list, because when you cast your Mishra's Bauble, you get to trigger Earthbend. And I think there might be this really insane like Gruul Cheerios grinding station package. It's Underworld Breach. Then you have your land sacrifice effects.
You get to run artifact lands. Also to do the thing.
Lands. I think there might be like this Gruul Landstorm Cheerios.
Kind of like what Rydia wanted to be. But I think we'll also run Rydia. We were talking about like that just lines up like, okay, every time a land enters, I get to loot in my Gruul Land Storm deck where I bring lands back. So like that's a lot of landfall.
Yeah, and it's 3 power, so it triggers it, or it doesn't trigger, but it automatically stations like your Exploration Brood ship, which is awesome because that also allows you to sack your Earthbended land to replay something out of your graveyard, so you get to trigger your Earthbend again. I might take a crack at it because I built a Rydia list that I really enjoy. Yeah, I built a Rydia list I really enjoyed. And then once I started like playing more with Rydia, I just felt like it was missing something. I felt like I had to have always one too many pieces because Rydia itself, its effect was really powerful and I really liked it. You always felt cracked when you got to bring back your Urza Saga. You're like, yes. This plus Urza Saga is kind of sweet. I don't think games are going to go long enough for that to matter, but
I've seen that synergy. But also Saga goes and gets a lot of the things we were talking about too.
You did. This is definitely a Saga deck for sure.
You also, the kind of like level 1 Earthbend stuff we haven't even talked about is just anytime you Earthbend a fetch land, it's ramp. Because the fetch land comes back. If you leaned in that direction, you also get to continually strip mine people. With like an amulet effect, you get to just say, anytime I cast a spell, I strip mine somebody. Leaning, which isn't even like your plan A, but I think is a very reasonable, easy to assemble plan B that you can just strip mine lock the table essentially. And any other effect you have, again, it also lets you potentially loop your own lands by strip mining them and bringing them your earthbent lands back. Earthbending is just one of those mechanics that the more you play with it, the more you'll realize like, oh, I get to do this. Like it's so gross.
Yeah, I think that card's pretty interesting. Let me think for a second.
I might just splash red for this and throw it in Rog. Just see what I can do with it. We didn't even mention Earthbending is kind of broken with crop rotation. You don't lose the land. Any of those kind of effects that like cost sacrificing a land, which you're working with more in Korvold, sick Ice Till Explorer deck. Yeah, watch out for this one.
Either I like it as its own commander, and then it's like what Rydia wanted to be, and then it just becomes like this like way more like hyper-focused strategy because you get your engine really, it's kind of hard to kill. It's a 3/4. It's not like you just get Bowmaster down or anything like that. And just getting back your instant or sorcery from your graveyard is actually really nice. Like that's not nothing. I could see this potentially in the Wandering Minstrel version that's not the Lurrus version, obviously, because you can't play it because as a complement to Ice Till Explorer in that deck, because they run either typically like you'll see like Blossoming Tortoise and Ice Till Explorer is like your 4 drops. I think I almost like, even though they're not red, and I've seen some like versions of Wandering Minstrel, not to do a super deep dive on it, that they play like Ledger Shredder as a discard outlet. Like it's just way to like filter your draws. I think if you built the Wandering Minstrel to be more red leaning, then you get to play Rydia and this. Because I would rather play Rydia than Ledger Shredder at any day of the week in that list. And I just think that's interesting because that's already a Squandered Resources Zern Orb deck as well that's playing those types of sack outlets.
And you have just
and it's also
your Amulet effect in the zone.
Yeah, Amulet effect in the zone, Amulet in the main deck, and it's also got blue, so it's drawing lots of cards. I just think that it's got a lot of potential. For a $2 mythic rare, I think it's absolutely
just a regular rare.
Financial. Oh, it's just a regular rare?
Yeah, not a mythic.
Oh, then $2, go for it.
I'm excited. I want to do a dive on this one.
It's pretty exciting. Watch Sam already have like a Rog Thras list built with it.
I hope he does. Like, let him figure it out. It saved me the trouble. One other commander, I guess technically we have another thing that could be a commander, but not great. One other actual commander I think we're going to be looking at is Fire Lord Azula for 1 and Grixis. You get a legendary creature, Human Noble, with Firebending 2, which means whenever this creature attacks, you add red, and that mana lasts until end of combat. And whenever you cast a spell while Fire Lord Azula is attacking, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. So you have a 4/4 no haste. That's the biggest. Yes, I know. You got to give it haste or whatever if you want to do the thing. You want to speed it up. But a 4-mana 4/4 commander that presumably you untap with 4 to 5 mana after you get it out, right? And then you attack, make 2 red. Anything you cast during combat, any of your instants that you go for are doubled. Doesn't take a lot to make it seem pretty broken. If you when you get to do the thing, if you have the attack, you're in combat, Azula's attacking, you get all of that to go your way. Doesn't seem hard to imagine a Grixis list kind of popping off at that point, where you Dark Ritual for netting 5 mana, Cabal Ritual goes crazy. Your Nas is pre-backed up. Anything you do in combat is like that you only want one of, basically has a counter spell, there. They have to double, interact with it. I expect she's going to be more on the niche side. We already have your Kefkas, your Norman to be a little bit more, or Fleam to be a little bit more niche and synergistic. I just talked about Anala doing really well right now. Reasonable stuff to do in the Grixis space, not even mentioning like Roxai if you want to go fully non-synergy, basically. I don't know. What do you think about Azula?
Well, it's the first true mean Grixis Girls card because she is mean.
Yes, she is the Grixis mean girl.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I'd have to read the text. Isn't there a new? I cannot believe I'm saying this out loud. A new Ninja Turtle card coming out. It's like Raphael's card. And it you can wheel, but it's only during combat or something.
Yeah, basically it has ninjutsu basically, where you have to return an attacking creature and you can cast it. I don't know if it works with Azula if you're not attacking with another creature, because I don't think she'll see to put it on the stack. You have to return Azula to your hand as the cost. So I don't think it can get doubled. But if you have any, presumably you might also lean into face breakers, other stuff that cares about combat. So your Ragavan, stuff like that. But anything also just that mechanic in general, getting instants and sorceries that functionally have ninjutsu on them, those presumably line up pretty well with Azula because there's more effects that should be sorceries that you can turn into instants.
I'm not a personal fan of this card because I'm looking at the other Grixis. I feel like Grixis just has so many strong options for a baseline. And there's even strong commanders that don't even see play in Grixis, whether they're kind of too slow. I think being 4 mana without haste and you can't really play it earlier, and you're also not in a color pie that, because it's also it's Grixis 1, right?
Yeah,
so
triple pips,
and it's not something like Gwenum where Gwenum gets to go all in on Gwenum being a very concise color, being monocolored. So, and
where it's mostly deterministically, if I get to attack I win, versus Azula, which needs cards to support it.
And you have to be attacking. And I don't know. Especially in the format right now, I absolutely would not play this. When decks like Rogsai, Rao, Turbo Slanted Blue Farm, there's a lot of decks that can just cook you. Dargo, crying out loud. Any variation of a Turbo Dargo list,
And I think it's just one of those also that people who love this character will play it anyways, and they'll be able to win games not even casting her, and then sometimes they'll get to do the thing, so it's a cool card to get to have. I don't expect it to make a big splash other than there might be a really good player who just loves this card and they just play it anyways, and that there's always the chance for that, where the floor is Grixis, and sometimes they'll get to do cool Azula things. Maybe they build it more control-y to try to get to untap with her.
Yeah, they'll just kill you with Oracle Decon, and they'll be like, yeah, but my deck top though,
It does get to do the kind of the Kess thing where you get just double Tan Impact or double Decon.
You know what doesn't need enablers?
Hydroid Crisis.
Is Hydroid Crisis at instant speed.
Yeah, so our next one is Wan Shi Tong Librarian. I guess now, no, I mentioned to Eric earlier, I saw Mingu call it Washington. Might stick. This is our second Wan Shi Tong card. And for X blue, you get a legendary creature, Bird Spirit, bird notable creature type, pretty good one. For a 1/1, and it has Flash, Flying, and Vigilance. When Wan Shi Tong enters, put X +1/+1 counters on him, then draw half X cards rounded down. And whenever an opponent searches their library, put a +1/+1 counter on Wan Shi Tong and draw a card. Reasonable, low mana, 2 mana, floor is essentially an Archivist of Ogma. When opponent searches, you draw a card. Instead of gaining a life, you put a counter on it. But any deck that's sitting around and holding up mana, if you cast it for X equals 2, you draw a card on ETB. Plus, presumably, you did it in response to a tutor. So likely it's going to draw 2 cards for 4 mana. And then if you have just tons of mana lying around, it scales up. It lines up really well in like Kennen, where a lot of them don't even have big flips anymore, and you might just cast the 6 mana Wan Shi Tong on the end step instead of a Kennen flip. It's a pretty annoying card that this is the second flash opponent triggers it draw engine that blue got with a good creature type. Bird is most notable in Rogthras, but has all those same things in Kennen, I think. The only downside I really see on this card is that it comes in as a 1/1. If you don't kick it, it's kind of hard. Like, it will get eaten up by Bowmaster, same way Fairy Mastermind often does. But if it takes them a little bit to find the Bowmasters, there's a good chance this is a 3/3/4/4, and it's smacking you for 3/4. Like, you're not going to work through it, really. It also is a infinite mana outlet if you happen to, in your Kennen or your Rogthras, which your decks that are going to be playing it don't have access to Thrasios or your Kennen or whatever, net your infinite mana and then just spend enough to draw most of your deck with Wan Shi Tong, you're good. This is an annoying card to get printed.
And if there is like more of the Timna mid-range list with blue in it, this card's like kind of great, right? Because you get to like flash it in, draw some cards, draw some that, untap, attack.
One of those TNT cards that works with both halves of the deck.
We're cooking. We're back. Yeah. They're back, baby. That card's, I mean, I think the card's, I mean, it had like how many words is on this card?
Total words, a lot. 3 keywords. It's because he's a librarian.
Any card that's modal, like, because it is. It draws cards. It provides value. It's a potential like Matt said. It's a infinite mana outlet. I mean, it checks all the boxes, right? The only thing you're not probably seeing it in is like any kind of like true turbo deck, unless it's like, I mean, Kennen, because Kennen doesn't care about, because Kennen's going to make double blue pips pretty easy because it's just a mana generation battery, like in that, or even like maybe like Rogthras. So
yep,
I mean, it's a pretty powerful card, and it happens to be a mythic, so it's pretty expensive. So
yeah, I've already seen it like showing up in modern and stuff like that. Like if it catches on, it could get even higher. But this is one of those, you couldn't get it cheap. This is one of those cards when they showed it, everyone was just like, oh yeah, this is a banger. And the earlier you get, it's annoying too, because the earlier you get it down, people have to fetch. They can't not do it. I do like that it probably isn't a blue farm card. I think the double blue pips might be a little much for that. Maybe it's fine there. They've run like Fairy Mastermind, but that also has like, you get to do the thing with Fairy Mastermind Smothering Tithe. 1 in a blue is a little bit easier to hold up than double blue pips. So I like that it leans more towards the Simic decks, probably. But it is just another good blue card. I like that it's a tutorable engine for like the decks that can't usually like, find their Rissics. So like specifically, the Kennens and Rogthrases like we talked about. Yeah, it's just kind of a banger. It's kind of nuts.
Fail case scenario, it pitches to the forces. It also is a cheap legendary for Mox Amber. So yeah, it checks a lot of boxes.
Next up, another flash flyer. We'll try to speed this up a little bit because we're running a little short on time. 2 white legendary creature Bison ally. That's Appa, Steadfast Guardian. This is a 3/4 flash flyer that when it enters, you airbend any number of other target non-land permanents you control. And then whenever you cast a spell from exile, you create a 1/1 white ally creature token. Like we mentioned earlier, airbending is you exile the card. While it's exiled, you can spend 2 rather than its mana cost to pay it. So I can have this enter, target my Cloud of Fairies, some other creature, spell seeker, some other creature with any TB, and then I can spend 2 generic mana to recast that spell. Appa notably is one of the only cards like this that targets non-land permanents. A lot of them target creatures. Appa does let you airbend your Candelabras, your, Ristic Study if someone's trying to blow it up. In really weird decks where you run both of these cards, you get to airbend your Breach and try again later. Lots of cool things it gets to do, where it gets to kind of be a sort of like a Restoration Angel type thing, or a Yorion where you get to exile your whole board. You just have to spend the mana for it. And then also, again, this seems like a card you really play in those Bant Cradle kind of decks, because whenever you cast those airbended cards, you make a 1/1. The crazy case of this is like I have Cloud of Fairies and some clones and then a Cradle in play, and I get to airbend my Cloud, have it make another 1/1, ETB on tap 2 lands, airbend a clone, make another 1/1, Cloud of Fairies, airbend a clone, make another 1/1, and then you can also at that point airbend the Appa. So you'll legend roll. You don't need to keep both of them, but you do get the Appa again. Those kind of cradle-oriented Bant decks, similar to what we talked about with the Gat Master, whatever his name was.
The Gat Master.
You also get to do, I think, are also great in Appa. Again, Peregrine Drake, dude. Peregrine Drake. And this also, I think this is really good in these kind of decks. I have a gnat flying around me. Get away. Yeah, I think Appa looks sick in these same kind of decks. It lines up better than I really don't know his name. I guess I'm just going to call him Gat Master. In like your Derevis, this gets to enter, untap a whole bunch of stuff, do your Derevi, helps you set up those clone loops that Derevis are doing now, because you can refire a clone on whatever you need and set up the Derevi into the zone and start looping. I think it lines up great in a lot of these Bant-centric cradle-focused decks. It's another win for the Yoshi Thras gamers and the Livio Thras gamers.
And if you want to see this deck probably see play in Derevi, just wait till the end of the month, because the new God of Commander tournament is at the end of the month.
Oh, nice.
And they love Derevi over there.
They do love Derevi. Next up, we have one of the red cards of the set we're going to be talking about, which is Redirect Lightning, which is another lesson. It's an instant. And you get to, as an additional cost to cast a spell, you can pay 5 life or pay 2 generic mana. And then you change the target of target spell or ability with a single target. So it is very similar to the misdirection text, although that can't hit abilities. Notably, unlike Deflecting Swat, this has to target an ability with a single target. So you can't use this on a random ability just to cast a spell. As much as I would use this to target my Rowan activation to pay another 5 life, which would be really sick, you cannot do that. And then it can't hit things like a Fire Covenant, for instance, or any other spell with multiple targets. You can't use it on that. For, I think, especially decks that have trouble getting their commanders out in time to make Deflecting Swat always viable, or decks that just are in low, sans blue, sans white kind of area where they don't have a lot of interaction, lines up pretty well. We've seen cards like Bolt Bend, where this is very similar, but for that you basically have to have your big guy in play, like your Ob Nixilis or whatever. Whereas this, kind of at any point in the game, is more castable. The less you care about your life, the better. Just kind of I'm playing it in Rowan, feels really good there specifically because that deck cares a lot about removal, not so much about counter magic, but sometimes. And it also just gives you interaction. These kind of effects to redirect stuff can be really nice. To somebody goes to bounce something, you change it to some, one of their things while they're trying to win, can redirect the counter magic back at them, help the table interact, and just stop win attempts, hit an orange chant, whatever. Just pretty good in those Rakdos kind of color decks.
I mean, the card's really good. What I like is that it gives lower color red decks, not even just Rakdos, but I'm talking about red green, mono red, red white, those types of decks, just more interaction. Yeah, I mean, I think the card's just it's a good, strong tool. I don't know, we'll see. I'm sure, I know it's going to show up. It's going to show up in, like I said, any those types of decks. And when you see play, and when it's played, it's probably going to feel really powerful.
Also, notably, another way, if you care a lot, especially about the channel lands, to be able to interact with those. For people besieging your stuff, Otawara, it also usually lines up better than, the main answer people have for this is usually Deflecting Swat. And specifically, Swat with Breach usually sucks because it's a ton of mana to protect your Breach. Whereas this gets to be another 1 mana, just escape it way to protect your Breach from besiege you if you already had it in your graveyard, or, get to refire it. Now we're talking about the real cards. We're not messing around with any of these interaction garbage and any of these draw engines. This is the real gaming right here. These are green cards, okay? First up, we have the Cabbage Merchant. You get a 3 mana, 2/2, legendary creature, human citizen. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, create a food token. And whenever a creature deals combat damage to you, sacrifice a food token. That is the one kind of downside with them. You can tap 2 untap foods you control. Add 1 mana of any color. This is the closest green has got to a Smothering Tithe type thing. We don't even usually get any of the whenever an opponent X, do X type effects, especially that are this common. A lot of times it'll be your Runic Armasaur type things, really niche. When somebody taps a creature, or activates an ability, or does this, you do a thing. Cast a non-creature spell happens a lot in cEDH. You don't need me to tell you that. And they can't pay. They can't get around it. All they can do is try to get rid of the Cabbage Merchant to deny you the mana. But he's making foods. He's making a lot of food, and you're untapping with a lot of mana, and you get it throughout your turn. Obviously, this is I can play this with my Thrasios in play and tap, and people try storming off, I get to net mana and do stuff. Same thing with Kinnan. Does not make extra mana with Kinnan. This is just a banger. This is a staple in green. Most green decks will probably need a reason not to play Cabbage Merchant. It is really, really, really strong.
If you've listened to any cEDH content creator, they have covered this card. Things that I kind of want to just quickly go over. It's easy to cast. Why is that important? Is because you can cast it super simple off Ancient Tomb on turn 2 or turn 1 off of a Lotus Petal or 0 mana artifact effect into Ancient Tomb, which is awesome.
Your tombs, your soul rings, your mana vaults, those accelerated
City
starts.
Traders.
Yep.
Yeah, I would probably still be okay with going with like City of Traders ESG into this, especially like if you know you're going to produce at least 1 to 2 mana on the backswing. The foods are permanent. Obviously, they're tied to the Cabbage Merchant. It's legendary, so it's great with Delighted Halfling. Makes it uncounterable. Which I really like. Fantastic greens to Zenith target. That makes it excellent. It's a human. So if there's any decks that are running Cavernous Souls for human, bodes really well for your Grand Abolisher effects because now they're humans. And so now you just get to double down on that. I think that really helps Seedborn Muse be more of a true mid-range strategy because now you get to untap all your stuff. Yeah, I mean, just base level, this card is, it's nice that green got something that, like you said, that whenever an opponent mouth breathes, you get rewarded, which typically green doesn't get like something like that. That's a blue thing. That's a blue and white thing. Because these color combinations aren't really tied together outside of like really one deck right now seeing a lot of play, which would be like TNT. With and against opposing Cabbage Merchants, your culling ritual is going to be fire. Like,
yeah, that's
absolute
true.
Fire. I can already tell you, I have cast a Dosin, played a bunch of spells into other people's Cabbage Merchants, used my foods to add mana as well, and cast a Culling Ritual. I mean, I think I Culling Ritualed for like, I don't know, something crazy, like 28 or something, you know, like on turn 3.
This card is going to send the dockside count through the roof, dude.
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't be funny if I didn't pull a Dockside Extortionist out of a collector booster pack. But I got pretty lucky there. You know, I was like, man,
I forgot they printed that. I forgot they reprinted him too. God.
Yep. Cabbage Merchant's an excellent card. If you don't own one, get yourself a copy. If you find a Japanese regular art foil, ship that to me, not to Matt.
I need it.
I mean, we could probably do an entire episode on specifically this card and the next card we're going to talk about and how they've probably affected our decks.
I think especially the next one because there's so much, which we got to cover some of it with Toph, some of the synergies, the ease of use on that one and the low CMC. It's the big thing.
One more thing with Cabbage Merchant. I think this makes Gilded Goose an option for a mana dork as well. Gilded Goose notably is 1 green for a 0/2 bird. So again, another bird, by the way. Just saying. When it ETBs, it makes a food. It also can pay a green and a colorless and tap itself to make a food. But it has sacrifice a food, make a mana. So just a simple play is just like a turn 1 Gilded Goose into a turn 2 Cabbage Merchant because you'll eat your food. And then you're going to make foods on the back. So now you can untap, tap whatever foods. Let's say they played 4 things, talismans, rocks, those types of cards. Let's say you have 4 foods. You can tap your 4 foods, make 2 mana, 2 per 1. And then you can also use your goose to eat a food because it doesn't matter if it's tapped or untapped to make an additional mana. So now you have something that continuously feeds your goose. I'm not saying it's like an automatic include at all. For my deck, I'm running Gilded Goose for various reasons, but
it's also really good just for colors that don't have a hierarch. Specific, like if you can't run Noble or Ignoble Hierarch, like I don't know if I would run it in Teamer, but it makes sense because I don't even have an Elves of Deep Shadow or a Deathrite. Like if same thing with Kinnan, like you don't get those. They haven't made a blue-green dork. Our last one for the set that we're going to be talking about is Badgermole Cub. For 1 and a green, you get a 2/2 Badgermole. And when this creature enters, Earthbend 1, target land you control becomes a 0/0 creature with haste that's still a land. Put a +1/+1 counter on it. When it dies or is exiled, return to the battlefield tapped. And Badgermole Cub also says, whenever you tap a creature for mana, add an additional green. The floor, no other synergy, nothing else going on with it. You have a 2-mana 2/2 that animates one of your lands. And that land, when it taps for mana, since it's a creature, now generates an additional green, and if it were to die or be exiled, enters the battlefield tapped again. So I've opened my land up to get Swords to Plowshares, or done this so they can Bowmaster my Cradle, blah blah blah. Doesn't matter. It comes back. And then anything else you do, you start doing multiple of these where you earthbend a bunch of lands, they tap for extra mana. You have an Enduring Vitality, you have a Cryptolith Right. It works like a Kinnan in that scenario. And also, like we mentioned with Toph and kind of stuff already, earthbending is just so much better than it initially reads because there's so much powerful stuff. You're playing Corvold, sacrificing lands, they come back. They're 1/1 creatures that you get to, I could sacrifice a creature and then the material comes back. I'm not even using material and I'm still getting to use it. There's so much powerful stuff. I already recently talked about and posted a bunch of stuff of just like, it felt like it immediately sped up Rogthrast because I have a 2-mana creature that basically any kind of cradle shenanigans I'm doing, the cradle count is kind of functionally, especially if you earthbend on cradle, it's goes up by 3 because I make 2 bodies and my cradle taps for an additional green because it is a creature now. That's a lot of speeding up that you get to do. This card just lines up amazingly in any land focused, not even super heavily land focused, any kind of land focused deck. Nantuko on it, you get to make copies that are they'll just be a land. They don't copy the earthbended part. They don't come in as creatures. Notably in Rogthrast, this is a tutorable wild growth for your basic. So you have basic island, tutor up a Badgermole. My basic island taps for blue and a green for Earthcraft. Card is absolutely nuts.
It checks the box. It's easy to cast.
Yes.
And it's got it's got some sweet creature types. Those are irrelevant, but it's awesome for Green Sun Zenith, right? Like this is again another just super sweet Green Sun Zenith target. So I like when this card got spoiled and I was like, this card's like really good. And I actually started testing with it. And then I actually got to play like actual games with it. And then I actually got to play in a small tournament with this and Cabbage Merchant. And what I was saying about the Gilded Goose is this also gives me an additional dork. So now I get to go up to several dorks in the Corvold list, which cleans up a lot of your 1-drops situations. And it allows like all your dorks minus Ragavan, because Ragavan's not really a dork, but to produce that additional green. I've gotten a lot of questions and people don't understand. Apparently they don't understand. Some people just, and I can understand like why it's a little confusing, but like Gilded Goose is a mana ability. It does not use the stack and it does not target. It's not a planeswalker. Orcish Lumberjack does not use the stack. It is a mana ability. Vondu Bushranger in the list. It is also a mana ability. Now, why is this important? Let's just say this is kind of like your draw, like land dork go. Next turn, you can just go land, ESG or SSG, Badgermole Cub comes in, targets your forest. You slide that forest up. It's going to tap for 2. Lumberjack's going to sack it. It's going to make the 3 plus the 1 off the Mole Cub. So you make 6 mana on turn 2 without losing any tempo, because your land just comes back. That's why I love this card so much, because its floor is so good. When Dockside left the format, aside from Dockside being broken, Dockside just being like a 2-mana make 2 facilitator, where it gives you a body and then 2 additional mana. So like Manamorphose with the body. That right there was a lot of times just good enough to cast like my 5-mana commander, which was awesome, because then you always have your scalable stuff like Unearth, Reanimate, those types of things that come back. Mole Cub does a lot of that. It allows you to basically generate a lot of mana, whether it's turn 2, turn 3, obviously. I can't talk about how sweet that really is, and then how it scales with your dorks. It makes your dorks so much better. Also, a common play for any Green Sun Zenith deck is a lot of times you use your Green Sun Zenith to go get Dryad Arbor. This just makes your Dryad Arbor insane. You don't have to earthbend it. It just makes your Dryad Arbor like really good. So,
which notably in like the blue decks, Kinnan can't do. And it will probably get confusing in Rogthrast when people have Badgermole, Kinnan, normal creatures that tap for mana and lands that tap for mana, because Badgermole gets to be a second Kinnan for half of them, but then Kinnan doesn't work for the lands where Badgermole does. So I will not be surprised when there's confusion, but it is also functionally like a Kinnan we get to clone for normal purposes of creatures tapping for mana, which is sick.
Yeah, again, just being able to have your sacrifice effects without losing tempo. And we're not even talking about the land entering back into the battlefield, whether it's tapped or untapped. With any kind of landfall strategies with your Nissa, that might just be the perfect thing to trigger your Nissa for the second time. That's pretty sweet. Really nice. It actually fits into the Minstrel Luris list. Because it's a 2-drop, but just Minstrel in general, like any type of those amulet effects. Obviously, I'm sure Lumra is just like hyped to have an additional early mana facilitator.
And like a tiny Lumra with Earthbend in general. of just, I get to
Yeah.
sack a land and it come back. It
Yeah.
lets you take advantage of those landfall and sack things more without having all the mana to go all the way in.
You know, there's a few downsides, Matt. I'm sure you'll talk about, like, just like, you know, if you like, you can like clone a cradle or something like that if it becomes that. But it's really interesting just for the fact of, like, you know, simple draws of like Landork Pass into like maybe another mana accelerant into like Mole Cub, like play your cradle, Mole Cub on your cradle. Now your cradle's going to tap for what, 4?
Yep.
So then you get to go like straight into your Ice-Tail Explorer on turn 2.
Or notably,
You just, like-
really common play pattern is Finale Effect for 2. Once you hit 4 mana and that cradle count goes up again, because you kind of jump up, which I get to untap a land, especially if I've earthbended 2 lands. I'm more likely to have wild growth type land or soul lands with my Cloud of Fairies because I have more lands that are worth untapping for extra mana. And then again, I get to untap my creature cradle, which taps for an extra mana. Dude, you go to the moon so quick. Like you just get to actually, your cradle scales so much faster. This is like a tutorable, like you mentioned. It was pretty common. I would go Green Suns for Wall of Roots if I had literally no direction. It's a card that keeps on giving. We're not even going to be able to talk about things that people will be doing week 1 and week 2 with this card. All these overlapping synergies. Earthbend is a crazy mechanic.
Yeah, and we're just talking about the synergies. So, I mean, Cub has, like, there's definitely some combos with Ashaya with this. Obviously, It's really great with any of your sacrifice effects or landfall effects. I couldn't have asked probably for a better 2 creatures from this set. It didn't matter that they're green. They just happened to be green, which was really awesome because that just makes the Green Sun Zenith package like that much better. But I mean, just the ability to generate speed, mana consistency, and material without losing tempo is all I could ever ask for. Again, I'm not saying green Dockside because Dockside was in a different tier level, but to make a card as fair as this, but as powerful as this, I think they really kind of hit the nail on the head. And, you know, not to mention the 60 card constructed implications of this card, which is really nice.
It's like a perfect power level where you could never complain to get this card banned in Commander reasonably. You could never make that complaint, but green decks going forward are going to be so ecstatic they get to run this thing.
I don't want to sit there and say Ice-Tail Explorers is a staple, but I definitely think that card maybe in any type of, I don't even say non-turbo because like Ice-Tail Explorer, like, I mean, I've played Ice-Tail on 2 and like basically comboed on 3 with the Underworld Bridge just because of the Ice-Tail Explorer and land loops because you're milling in your graveyard. I mean, it does some absolutely silly things because it's extra lands, it's mill. I mean, it kind of does it all. I feel like having something, not necessarily like Cabbage Merchant, but like having something like maybe like Badgermole Cub, it might be bringing like these packages a little bit more in. Kind of like how Sam's been like messing with Ice-Tail Explorer just being like a really good card like in his Rog Thras list. I'd like to see those cards kind of get a little bit more consideration. I like making a Soul Ring every turn off of, you know, Ice-Tail Explorer. And just another way to help protect your cradle, you know, or not necessarily protect your cradle, but cradle insurance.
Yeah.
As well as, you know, any of your utility lands, especially like Talon Gates or Emergent Zone or even Shifting Woodlands, which is awesome.
I think the thing it does, kind of like what you were saying, is a lot of these cards have been niche parts of green that are packages that go into decks. I think we're getting closer to these are good stuff green cards because there's so many of them that you want to run that it's getting, I still don't think we're quite there. We're like Kennon's going to play Ice-Tail or TNT's going to play it. But the more of this kind of stuff we get, the closer we do get to just like, yeah, I might as well just add this. And I might like where it's like, well, of course I'm going to run it. And like when we're getting closer to that than we were even a few months ago when Ice-Tail was printed.
I mean, it's one of my highest tutor targets in my list. Like, I've probably searched for Ice-Tail Explorer more than Nissa. And that's kind of crazy because you think of like the Turbo Landfall list as like a Nissa deck.
Ice-Tail's also like Badgermole in that they both a lot of times essentially say like you get a mana back when they enter the battlefield off of the cost. So they overlap with that too. I want to just kind of run down some things you can do with Earthbending and this card specifically. I got to do, which is really cool, crop rotate my Cradle away because it was Earthbent to get the Talon Gates and Cradle returned back to the battlefield to set up my loop for Breeze Caller. Awesome.
Crop rotated away my Cradle with Ice-Tail Explorer in play, got Shifting Woodlands, replayed the Cradle out of the graveyard due to obviously Ice-Tail Explorer, was able to pay, make like X mana, activate Shifting Woodlands, and became Underworld Breach.
Briefly on what you had mentioned about the mana ability thing, do keep in mind when you do stuff like that on an earthbended land, you are creating a delayed trigger for it.
Mhm.
So if you want to make sure people don't have priority from you activating, Orcish Lumberjack, like if you at home are playing Corvold or something like it, make sure you declare the casting of a spell, activate the mana ability, and then the trigger will go on top so that there's not like, I'm going to tap for mana, make 4 mana off of Orcish Lumberjack, and then somebody with the delayed trigger on the stack silences you on top. Like if you don't actually declare your casting, if you just start activating abilities and let your triggers go on the stack, it's niche, but in a tournament, I would try to get a player doing that. If I ask them Earthbend trigger and they're like, yeah, Earthbend trigger, then I'd try to interact with them before they get to use their mana. Because it is a point where you do start to create triggers off of activated mana abilities, even though they themselves don't have triggers. So just keep that in mind. Like Eric mentioned, you can now obviously clone other people's cradles. Be very cautious earthbending a cradle and passing the turn. You shouldn't do that. I'll try to Gilded Drake it. I'll try to clone it. For my own cradles, I can now, if I don't have an untapper, Phantasmal Image is basically untap target cradle. So I get to just play it. It will just enter, the cradle will die, earthbend trigger, but I legend will get a cradle first, tap that cradle, and then I can let the real one come back if I want. It's not reasonable that you get to do this. And notably, the creature part is not copyable. So if you copy a earthbended land, it will enter as a land. It won't have haste. It won't have the earthbend text. It's just that land. So like on a breeding pool, it's just if I Phantasmal Image it or Springheart Nantuko trigger, it's just a breeding pool. It's not a 1/1. It's not a 0/0 that dies. It basically almost every time earthbending works the way you want it to. It's insane. I'm going to be Nantukoing Badgermoles probably decently often. I'm going to be cloning them decently often. They scale like crazy because I get to go Badgermole, animate a land, clone Badgermole, animate another land. They both tap for triple mana because they're both getting triggers from Badgermoles. So it's scaling up the more that I get to cast them. Card is nuts, dude. Card is crazy. And green decks get to do that too because you get to, like I said, Nantuko onto your Badgermole. So you can do that in Corvold where you go bestowed on Badgermole, make an extra Badgermole, get another trigger to Earthbend, do it again off like a fetch land. And then you could easily have all of your, off of Nantuko, all of your land creatures tapping for 4 or 5 mana. I love this card. It's my favorite card they've printed since MH3.
Pretty excited about this card. I was pretty pumped. Also, like, and this is stupid, but aesthetically, like, it's really cute, right? Like, it's a cute, adorable little animal. So I don't know how big it is in the actual show, like, because I know
I guess
like,
that one's small, but the full size ones are very large.
Yeah, they're large. They're also commons.
Yes, they're commons.
It's one of those cards that just kind of like it's endearing. Like Dockside was endearing. Whether you
can see it as like
the card or not.
You see it as like the face of your deck, or like that's a cool.
Yeah.
Like Dockside got to be the face of the format, partially because it's super broken and it's like defining, and also just look at him. You just see him, and he's just like he represents his card very well. Like you feel that way when you got to cast your Dockside. You basically felt like he looks on the card.
Yes, that is really true. What we lost in like Mana Crypt and Jeweled Lotus, Badgermole and Cabbage Merchant really, they pick up a lot of that heavy lifting. They're not as explosive in terms of being like 0 mana, but their consistency and resilience and produce material. What else could you potentially ask for out of cards that aren't like going to be like screamed to be banned or anything like that, but give a really big boost to green? Because we obviously saw a shift with Cradle being a massive part of the format. Non-Cradle decks were still doing very well, obviously like Blue Farm and whatnot, Rogsai. But this again, it just allows the Cradle decks to speed up a bit and also provide resiliency and a potentially different type of game plan. Like we were talking about like Cabbage, people were talking about Cabbage Merchant helping like mid-range decks out and just giving them more staying power. I'm looking to slam like a turn 1 to turn 2 Cabbage Merchant, Corvold, eat a cabbage, go untap with mana, or at the end of their turn use the cabbages that were made that turn over the next 3 turns and to cast like instant speed tutor, or even having like a pyroblast or something like that. Typically that's not my game plan, but typically you could just go, all right, cast Vamp Tutor into turn, untap with all my mana, cast Ad Nauseam.
Yeah, you even get the added floor of like your foods are also clues, and when Corvold's in play. As much as I would like to keep talking about Badgermole over and over, because there's so much stuff to say, I think, we got to wrap it up. So let us know what you're thinking about Avatar cards, if they've really unlocked something new in your deck, if there's stuff that we missed or overlooked. Like we mentioned, I think this will be a set that keeps on giving as people revisit it and reevaluate things, like after learning how their deck plays with some of these mechanics and going back and Even some of the less efficient versions of some of these cards that are in the set might be worth, looking at. So let us know what you're thinking, what you think about this set. I think this set is a slam dunk. I think this is how you do Universes Beyond. It makes Spider-Man look like a joke, which it already did and was. This is like a Final Fantasy tier set. You can tell they put a lot of work into it, and it's not this is not slop. This is a total banger, fantastic set. I think with all that being said, thank you so much for watching. And as always, go play cEDH. Have a good one, everybody.